a healthy market, a healthy environment, you need a healthy financial industry. And so this is why the president and his team are meeting with those individuals.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see what they said to him, to see and hear what they said to him. I mean, these are, some very smart people. We know a lot of them. Brian Moynihan, Steve Schwartzman, and others. Gordon Smith, who is stepping in for Jamie Dimon, obviously, who is recovering from his heart surgery. These are the sorts of people, they do understand the way the financial system works. I do feel like, and we've been talking about this, and it goes back to something you said at the very top of the show, the theme is escalation. There's also a different tone, a different level of seriousness that seems to be taking hold around activities as it relates to what companies are doing. I just saw a headline cross via Dow Jones that Amazon is going to be extending paid leave to its hourly workers. Those are the sorts of actions that we're starting to see companies take. Obviously, companies are doing things like allowing people to work from home, having some flexibility there. That works for a certain segment of the population. This is what is dealt with to some extent in Justin Fox's story.
Totally. It's very simple, folks. If you can, stay home, because right now at this point we can't contain it, so we try to mitigate it. We're trying to prevent, the further spread of it. That's what it's all about right now. When, by the way, we're talking about the casino industry, the hospitality industry, when to draw down part of an $850 million line amid the virus pit. I think we're going to start seeing certainly more companies who maybe are a little concerned about having enough cash on hand to weather this storm. We're going to see more and more of them continuing to do this.
Well, and it's interesting, so going back to Boeing, we talked about that a little bit earlier in the show. Mm-hmm. That was a company that they had a big loan that they were, according to our reporting, going to eventually draw down. This wasn't an emergency action, but the timing, the acceleration of it clearly was around this potential and this specific issue.
Yeah, did you do this headline about the company that flew pro baseball hockey teams shut down by the FAA? FAA alleges Paradigm Air Operators wasn't properly licensed. So these are teams that include the Indians, the Diamondbacks, Rangers, and Athletics. So what's very interesting is all of that happening. Brian Moynihan of Bank of America, of course, the CEO, at that White House meeting, and apparently speaking, this is a headline that crossed a few moments ago, saying that B of A well capitalized and had a good place with liquidity. To be quite honest, this is what you want to hear from your major banks.
Right.
This is where, we talked about this with China, smaller companies that were exposed to the virus. It was going to be much more difficult for them to weather it. These bigger companies with much more broad-based balance sheets, they'll have more of an ability to get through.
Well, speaking of banks, let's check in with Lenan Nguyen. She is one of our top reporters on the finance beat. She's been looking at how Wall Street is dealing with this, both as businesses operating, but also the importance in the broader economic and financial and corporate environment. Lenan, nice to have you with us.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So what's going on out there? Do you agree that it feels a little bit different today, that the ante has been upped?
I think the ante has been upped in the sense that the markets are looking to President Trump to provide some clarity in terms of policy direction and potential assistance to the markets. And it's clear the headlines that are coming out now from the bank CEOs, so Brian Moynihan, now also we're seeing a statement from Michael Corbat saying this is not the financial crisis. So clearly the bank CEOs are to assume that President Trump will also be trying to do the same. Brian Moynihan saying that, the banks are in a good place with liquidity and that they're well capitalized, and that definitely is true compared to the financial crisis.
Looks like, I just want to mention Constellation Brands. I guess it looks like their B shares, trading halt, volatility trading pause. So, I wonder if we'll start to see, this stock's down about 5%, but I'm not sure if there's more of a story there, but something we're certainly, it just started, it looks like, no, it didn't start trading again. Anyway, so just watching that.
More headlines coming from the President Trump saying he's also going to make some decisions about travel to Europe and set to announce those at 8 p.m. So we're starting to get a little bit more clarity about what the president may be talking about it and even when. It sounds like 8 p.m. tonight.
Right. And the president saying that the administration will be making small business loans. And this really speaks to what our economy ultimately is about. Those smaller businesses don't necessarily have the ability of big businesses with credit lines just standing by that they can tap. And we talk about small businesses being the backbone of this economy. And so that will be very, very important to see what he does as well to the small business community.
So, Lynette Nguyen, what are you hearing from your contacts on Wall Street, either about how their businesses are functioning or their general views of the market?
So I think there are two parts here. The first is the business functioning part, and it sounds to me like a lot of the banks that have separated staff and put them into remote locations have got those sites up and running, so that seems to be working fine so far. We do hear some cases, obviously, of financial firms reporting confirmed cases and having to deal with that. So on a business kind of operations standpoint, it seems fairly smooth so far. However, obviously the markets have been extremely tumultuous this week, and so we're trying to figure out what that means for the banks. It sounds like it was a good thing for Citigroup. So I think Citigroup is doing pretty well trading-wise this quarter.
Lynette Nguyen, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Italy's on lockdown. Ireland has canceled its St. Patrick's Day parades, and there's pressure from the NBA to have its teams play games without fans in the room. In short, coronavirus continues to upend everyday life and the portfolios of the world's wealthiest. For example, oil magnates Harold Hamm and Jeff Hillenbrand fell off the 500-member Bloomberg Billionaires Index. All told, the world's 500 richest people lost a combined $238.5 billion on Monday, the biggest daily plunge since October 2016. Thankfully, something is on the rise, literally. At a time when hand sanitizer is more valuable than luxury ingredients like lobster, the classic French soufflé is popping up, pun intended, in dining rooms from coast to coast. There's chocolate ones, foie gras and fig flavors, mezcal mint jalapeno soufflés, and delectable soufflé pancakes. Restaurateurs say it's a dish that just makes people happy. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Middle of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Steep losses for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Folks from CACI ringing that closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Stocks plunged around the world. Oil tumbled, and the stress in U.S. credit markets deepened after the World Health Organization called the virus spread a pandemic, and President Trump says he will be discussing plans to respond to the coronavirus. probably at 8 o'clock tonight. You can hear it live when it happens right here on Bloomberg Radio. Here are the closing numbers. S&P down 141 points, a drop of 4.9%. Dow Industrials plunged 1,467 points, down 5.9%. NASDAQ down 392 points. That was a drop of 4.7%. So the Dow average plunges 5.9% and ending in a bear market today. 10-year down 23.30 seconds, yield 0.88%. Gold down 0.8%, 16.36 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude tumbled 3.8%, 33.06 a barrel. So what are the opportunities in the stock market given the carnage in recent sessions? Melda Mergen is Deputy Global Head of Equities at Columbia Management. She was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Financials is one area we are looking at very closely. We know that, or we believe they don't really represent any systematic risk to the system like 2008, but some of the numbers, if you look at their valuation and the way they performed, feels like they've been penalized too much. So that's an area we are looking at closely for opportunities.
And it was another tough day for a lot of the airlines. Delta, for example, cutting capacity down 6.2%. American Airlines Group dropping today by 4.35%. Southwest down 6.8%. JetBlue tumbling by 6.9%. Recapping, Dow sinking into a bear market. S&P down 141, down 4.9%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Your next move will be your last.
Nobody move a muscle.
Damn, Stippy, you got some moves.
And I'm moving from town to town.
Time is money. Let's go. Come on, move it.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Bloomberg Business Week. Movers and Shakers with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed. A lot of moving and shaking, mostly to the downside on this Wednesday. We did mention, though, equities did finish off their lows, but the Dow, it's official. It's in a bear market. Check it out. 495 names in the index are lower today. This is the S&P, of course. 10 are higher. It's interesting. One of our viewers and listeners here at Bloomberg, go home and sleep it off. It's over. Oversold. Don't panic. I do wonder at some point we will get to that point, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, and I do think that part of what is playing into this is just the constant headlines. You know, the Ivy League canceling all sports for the spring. I know that there's no real obvious economic impact to that, but that does affect sentiment. We were talking with Yelena Shalechev about the idea that, you know, this is a consumer economy, and this is affecting the consumer economy.
Exactly. And I do agree, don't panic. We will figure this out. But nonetheless, at this point, because the lack of visibility about when we do figure this out is not quite there. And maybe we'll get some clarity in terms of help from Washington and the administration, Congress a little bit later on this evening when President Trump speaks. But until we get that, people are kind of just in the dark a little bit. And that's why we're seeing so much selling. I do want to point out S&P 500 major industry groups. There are 11 of them. Bottom of the pack were industrials. They were down almost 6% as a group. Top of the pack was healthcare. Still down, Jason, but down about 3.9%.
Well, and if you look at the individual names, a healthcare name was the number one gainer. Gilead Sciences moving on some headlines, I believe, related to the CDC. Did you see those same headlines? Up 1.9%. Gilead was only, as you say, 10 names gaining.
The CDC director telling lawmakers yesterday that Gilead's, I believe it's remdesivir, is being used to treat some U.S. coronavirus patients on compassionate grounds. And so as a result, we did see shares of Gilead Science trading higher. So that's kind of interesting. And I guess when you're in that situation with various patients, that's where unapproved drugs, federal rules allow it to be used. And so that's why you saw Gilead.
So some experimentation going on there that obviously could.
With extreme cases.
Yep. Yeah, obviously going on. Do want to bring you a headline. This is a little bit sad, based on a conversation that we had a couple weeks ago. Modell Sporting Goods voluntarily filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, closing all stores. We had Mitchell Modell, the scion of that well-known New York chain. They were looking for a deal and apparently did not get one because all Modells are going to be closing.
Right. In the best of times, right, if you're struggling, especially retail chain, it can be difficult to move forward and maybe get the partnerships or the financing that you need. In an environment where the markets are selling off, the economic visibility isn't there, and we're talking increasingly about a recession, those companies that are in very, very vulnerable positions, and I think it's safe to say that they were in that position, it gets pretty tough. And we'll see if they're able to, it's a Chapter 11.
Yep.
So we'll see whether or not they can reorg and come out on the other side.
Yeah, potentially reorg, but for now, liquidating and closing stores.
Uber cut to hold from a strong buy over at CFRA. So just looking to see if there's any. This is what happens when I do multitasking in a bad way. Uber's just down fractionally in the after hours. You want to do the VIX?
Yeah, let's do the VIX. Volatility, obviously, back with a vengeance today, up about 15%, closing above that 50 level. Wow, 50.
Oh, and Best Buy saying Hubert Joly to retire as executive chairman.
Wow,
he's been with that firm for a long time. No?
Not that long.
Oh, it's not that long?
Not that long, yeah. And Corey Berry took over, I believe, as the CEO last year. The VIX closing at 54.24. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door. It's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
Dave Wilson back with us with his stock of the day. What's on your screen?
Korn Ferry's on my screen, Jason. It's a management consulting firm. The company advises businesses on how to organize themselves, helps hire executives, and trains leaders. Korn Ferry was founded in 1969, went public in 1999. The ticker is KFY. Now, the shares rose to a record in August 2018 after more than tripling in about 2 years. The gain was short-lived, and in the past 3 weeks, as stocks were falling, so was Korn Ferry. Today, the shares dropped to their lowest price since December 2016 in the wake of fiscal third quarter results that came out late yesterday. Now, last quarter's figures weren't the issue. Korn Ferry's earnings and revenue beat analyst average estimates in the Bloomberg survey. Instead, it was all about the outlook. Korn Ferry declined to give fourth quarter forecasts. The company did say it sees the coronavirus hurting business in this quarter and beyond.
All right,
and
Dave,
the shares down 12% after 16% loss on Monday.
Dave, we do want to take everybody to a playback. President Trump talking about that meeting with financial and banking executives. Let's listen to it.
The virus that we've become so familiar with. I'll be making some decisions. I've already made some decisions actually today, but I'll be making some other ones that are very important. And I thought I'd let the press in to hear some of the wisdom from the folks in the room. And maybe, Brian, I'll start with you. And Brian's the chairman, and he's the man at Bank of America, highly respected. Everybody in this room is at the highest level, highly respected. Brian, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for bringing us together. The CEOs of the large banks here want you to know that because of all the work done on the capital liquidity and all the things as we look forward to uncertainty due to the virus and the oil price changes. We're very strong and capitalized. We are in great position in terms of liquidity, capital, and strength. But most importantly, we're doing what we do best, which is helping our teammates, importantly, but also our clients and our small business customers, our medium-sized business customers continue to have access to credit. All of us are providing relief to any customer that has an issue of being out of work for the virus. The things we've done in every natural disaster that's occurred in many years. And we tell you that up until the last couple of weeks, the activity has been very strong, and it is still strong. We're still seeing people spend money. We're still seeing people go out. Small business loans are continuing to grow. Auto loans are growing. Mortgage loans are obviously very strong. But the real key is we're well capitalized. We're here to help small businesses, medium-sized businesses, the core American economy run, and to help our consumer clients really weather the storm in case they're directly affected by this.
Thank you, Brian, very much.
I think as part of that, Mr. President, I think it's important to recognize a few things. One is building off what Brian said. This is not a financial crisis. The banks and the financial system are in sound shape, and we are here to help. Part of it. I think second is when we look at what's going on, in many ways we're going at several challenges at the same time. We woke up, or we went through Sunday in a precipitous drop in oil prices, and we needed to deal with that when the market opened on Monday. Clearly, Corona is front of mind for everybody, not just here in the U.S. And I think the market's going through a period of trying to get price discovery, and I think also trying to figure out what is the intermediate and longer-term health of the economy. And I think what we saw is we saw some fears on the back of those, and some talk about potential recession on the back of those. And I think the market's going through a discovery phase of really trying to figure out what earnings are going to look like and where valuations should be. I think the good news is that the markets have performed in an orderly way. The infrastructure that supports the markets, I think, has held up through some pretty good tests. There's been some strains along the way, but I think it's held up well, and it's been orderly. And as Brian said, from the banking perspective, we're here to help. We want to provide liquidity. We want to lend to our small businesses. We want to be supporting our consumer clients.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's true. And I think prior to the coronavirus, it was just all go. The numbers were fantastic, and we don't even know what the numbers are now. We'll have to see. The numbers from a week ago were great, and from 2 days ago were great, but now we're hitting a patch, and we're going to have to do something with respect to getting rid of this virus as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. Our number one priority is the health of the people of our country, and so we'll be making most likely a statement. I'll be making a statement later on tonight as to what I've decided to do and what our country will be doing. Charlie, please.
President, the only thing I would add to what Brian and Michael said is just first of all reiterate that we are all here to help. That is what our institutions do. We're all in a position to do it, and I think we're being very, very thoughtful about how we can do that for both consumers, small businesses, as well as the companies that we deal with. I think we're all encouraging any of our customers or clients who are having any issues to make sure that they talk to us. We're all developing programs to ensure that as they and the employees and their customers go through this situation, that we're there to be a source of strength, whether it's to help them through issues with their fees, payments, or to be there to lend. That's what we do.
I'm glad you're saying that. That's great, because there may be some of that, frankly, more so than you've been used to for the last 3 years, right? It could happen. David?
I appreciate it, Mr. President. I'm glad to be here with my colleagues that run these other institutions. Most of what I'd say would echo what's been said. The banking system is in good shape. The virus obviously poses unique challenges, both for policymakers and for businesses, large and small, operating across the country. All businesses are very, very focused on their people, taking care of their people. As part of the banking system, we're looking to help businesses, large, small, individuals, any way we can, and are making the same steps and taking the same steps that these other institutions have spoken about. And so we'll get through this, but it's going to require some navigation on the part of all of us, and we're focused on doing our part.
We're doing very well. And we'll be doing a lot of additional work with small business, as you know. We're going to be adding many billions of dollars, and we're going to be making lots of small business loans, as the banks are too. So it will be. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, of course. But first, I'd like to thank you, Mr. President, for being so aggressive and very specific about protecting the health and safety of our employees. And I'm very encouraged by the leaders in this industry that are thinking along the same lines about their employees and their community. But I'd like to point out that SBA has the authority currently with $18 billion to provide loans with the support of all the lenders in this room. And they also have the opportunity to extend some of the payment terms up to 6 months. So I'm looking forward to working with every one of them to leave no money on the table on those $18 billion so we can provide support for the small businesses.
Yesterday, as you know, we met with the insurance companies, the top companies, the top people in the top companies, like yourselves, and they were very generous. And you know what they did with co-pays and everything else. They're going all out. So we appreciated that very much. Steve, what did you say? Steve, how much?
Go ahead. Steve, I think the financial system in the U.S. is in great shape compared to handle this problem. I think one of the issues is that as people are tested more and more, there'll be a better handle on what we're dealing with. Just because there'll be some economic effect, obviously, as this goes on, and we all hope it's short, but it's going to need the support of the banking community. It's going to need the support of the ability to be tested, and if we can do that, this has a natural ending, which most people lose sight of. And there'll be vaccines developed. That'll take a year to year and a quarter, but there may be other things meanwhile, and it requires a mobilization of our society to deal with.
Very good progress, Steve, at CDC and different places that are dealing with the problem. They've made really tremendous strides. So we'll be announcing that also. Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else have anything to say? Can everybody? Anybody?
Mr. President, I think you've done a fantastic job of putting the interest of our country first with your fast action on China and travel to and from China. I think your focus on fiscal stimulus is really important.
Right.
How do we help American families that live too often paycheck to paycheck get through this difficult time where they may lose their job or otherwise face more difficult circumstances? So I think your leadership on fiscal stimulus is really thoughtful and appreciated. And then all of us in this room know that the financial markets are working to help America. The interest rates changes that we've seen both in the Fed and the bond markets create an unprecedented opportunity for Americans to refinance their mortgages at a dramatically lower rate, which is really good for American households, or to have the opportunity to buy their first house or a new house for their growing families. So the markets have worked as we would hope at this moment of time to help provide stimulus to the entire economy through meaningfully lower interest rates.
Great job you've done. Please. And how is Jamie doing?
Jamie's doing well.
All right, say hello to him.
I will.
I hear he's doing fine.
He's making great progress. Good. So thank you very much for asking. So the bank has very rigorous resiliency plans, both in the United States and around the world. All of those are underway right now. All of our plans are designed, obviously, to protect and help our people. And to protect consumers and small businesses. We'll be there with forbearance plans. We'll be there to waive fees for consumers and small businesses who are under stress. And I think a very fair question is, are we still lending? And over the course of the last 40 days at JP Morgan, we've extended $26 billion worth of loans to both consumers and small businesses. And that's, as I said, over the last 40 days. We looked a little bit at at Seattle, which has been a center of the virus, and economic growth is still continuing. So we see it's slowed down significantly, but people are still going to restaurants, for example. We still see that people are buying food to be delivered by the new delivery services. And interestingly, in the data, we also see the pullback is much more from the older generation, my age, than it is from the millennial generation. So the millennial generation spend seems to be holding up very well.
I think there'll be a pent-up demand when this is gone. I think that everything that maybe where it's tamped down now, people are leaving their homes. I think you're going to see a tremendous pent-up demand, which hopefully won't be in the too distant future. Please.
Mr. President, we're not waiting for the customer or small business to call the banks. We're proactively reaching out to the customer and small businesses, waiving fees, making sure we can refinance a loan when possible. We're up 79% versus last year in refi. Still going to take a little while to find out how much the effect really is.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Mr. President, I might just add, as I represent the community banks across this country, rural markets, urban markets, suburban markets, they're there, they're standing ready, strong to support their communities, whether it be your very smallest businesses, the ag communities, the community banks are here to support and to help.
Thank you. I would echo all the sentiments that you just heard, Mr. President, and thank you for convening the group. I would also add that, and echoing on something Rebecca said, we're also helping not just all the large globally active banks, but the 5,100 banks across the United States build continuity and resiliency programs so we can keep the banking system open to support our customers and clients who are, in many cases, are facing a time of need. That's what banks do. They stick by their customers in good times and in challenging times, and that's what all the banks in the United States are doing today.
Very focused U.S. Bank, very focused on providing credit for small businesses. Right. They are the ones right now who are going to perhaps have a little bit of struggle. So we're getting credit to them rapidly and also being very lenient on repayment terms.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you all.
Yes, please.
Mr. President, you've heard that the financial system is strong, and I sort of echo that.
Yes.
But for those listening, the country is really strong. I mean, you've done a fantastic job, your administration. We're adding jobs. We need to all be more diligent in terms of our health management. We're learning that out of this. This is a long-term lesson to learn.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the United States of America, in my view, is very strong. And we need to remind ourselves that part of getting through a challenge like this is about confidence and supporting each other and having hope for the future. And for myself, I believe our best days are ahead. And working together, we'll make that happen.
Thank you very much, Mark. Great. Thank you very much. So I'll be making a statement tonight, probably at 8 o'clock, and we'll be starting some additional solutions. We made a great decision on China and Asia, and they're healing at a pretty good rate. Happy about that, and we could start to think about getting back involved in that part of the world. And as you know, we have another part of the world, Europe, that's in very tough shape. It's having a hard time right now with the virus, and we'll be making various decisions. You'll be hearing about them at approximately 8 o'clock tonight. Steve?
What sort of travel restrictions on Europe are you thinking of?
Well, I'll be letting you know that a little bit later.
Mr. President, are you going to be declaring a national disaster tonight?
We'll be talking about that later.
Mr. President,
all those things we're making a decision on.
Mr. President, we've heard in the past of industries that are too big to fail. In your estimation, are the airlines, are the cruise lines, is the hotel industry too big to fail?
I think they're going to be great. I think the folks around this table are the ones that finance them, and they understand. And they're great companies, but we're having to fix a problem that 4 weeks ago nobody ever thought would be a problem. Nobody. You read about them. You read about them from 1917, and you read about them from lots of other times, but nobody thought that we would be seeing. We were just discussing that. This came out of nowhere, and actually came out of China, which is the way it works. But we are going to get the problem solved. And the country is so strong. The institutions are so strong. In the past, you had problems with institutions. These are powerful institutions. They're built up. They're ready to go. And I know they'll be helping their customers during the short-term period. We think it's going to be a short-term period.
Do you mind if we ask the CEOs what they think the sort of stimulus package or measures might need to be?
I don't mind that. I mean, it's actually a very good question. I was going to ask it myself. If you've been hearing about the various forms, Brian, of stimulus, very different forms of stimulus. What would you say would be good, appropriate under these circumstances?
Well, I think the first thing is to add fiscal stimulus in a time of stress is the absolutely right answer. I think anything gets out to the most people. And so keeping people who are become underemployed or unemployed due to this hole on their wages or somehow supplementing that through unemployment and other types of programs, we think is a key thing. Because if you keep the broad group of American people with cash flow and money to buy goods and do things, the economy will be strong, and those individuals will have other people we should take care of, no question. In all our companies, anybody who's out for this virus is getting paid for as long as it takes, or anybody has high risk, we're all taking care of it. So I'd focus first on that level, and then the second major thing is take care of the health care problem, because the health care problem is what's generating the confidence. So between testing and building up the hospitals so they can receive and do great work as American medical community and hospital community can do with the patients is critical. So instead, other than the broad base of people in the hospitals, I think businesses and other things, we'll get through this. But if we take care of those things, this thing will correct pretty quickly.
If we get rid of the problem quickly, everything solves itself. We don't need stimulus, so that'll be good. But we are talking about various forms of stimulus. What would you think, Michael?
I think to add on to what Brian said, the support of small business is critical.
Right.
You look at the employment and you look at the importance across our economy, and unfortunately right now small business is suffering from both sides. One is there's been disruption in their supply chains in terms of receiving their goods that they need, and the other side of it is that there's uncertainty from the demand side in terms of what the future holds. So I think working with the banks in this room and well beyond the SBA to be able to put programs in place around forbearance, to be able to potentially up the limits in terms of lending in these programs. And again, I think they're things that have been used before effectively, and I think we can do it again.
Great. Thank you very much. Ken, go ahead.
Well, I think all of us in this room are very fortunate we're in a position to take care of our workforce. And I know that large corporate America is there 110% for their employees. The weak spot are the smaller businesses that don't have the financial flexibility. And in particular, our workers who are part of the gig economy. How do we think about where necessary direct fiscal support to the individuals in our economy who are least secure in their employment? You work for IBM, life's going to be fine. You work for Goldman Sachs, life's going to be fine. And if you are a part-time or gig worker, this is a moment of real trial. This is where fiscal accommodation can be quite powerful.
Right. I agree with that 100%. Anybody?
I would say that stimulus is appropriate. I personally like what you had mentioned in terms of some form of adjustment of payroll tax, a holiday, or even a complete restructuring. It is a regressive tax, and it's something that could help in the short run and the long term, and help provide more support for the 70+% of the U.S. that need some help in terms of more savings and stability of livelihood. And so it is a chance maybe to do something that helps the short run and the long term.
I think so. I think the payroll tax would be great. Democrats are not in favor of it. I'm trying to figure out why, because it would be something that would be very good for the citizens, for the people, and even longer term for the country. So that's a tax that people have long been talking about either cutting or getting rid of entirely. So, Steve, what do you have?
Just say it's great to always have the bankers in because you have tremendous visibility into the economy and what's going on, and we are interested in hearing that feedback, particularly at small and medium-sized businesses, in particular industries. We've cataloged for the president all of his executive authorities, which are quite significant. So there'll be various proposals he'll be rolling out quickly on that front, and we're also working with Congress on a bipartisan basis to be able to immediately help small and medium-sized businesses as well.
Mrs. President, you say to Americans who are concerned that you're not taking this seriously enough and that some of your statements don't match what your health experts are saying?
That's CNN, fake news. Go ahead. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's go, guys.
Thank you very much. 8 o'clock tonight. 8 o'clock tonight.
Thanks, guys. All right, Jim. Thank you, Jim.
You'll be notified very shortly, but around here. Within.
And you've been listening to President Trump in a meeting with some of the leaders of the financial industry, among them the CEO of Bank of America, the CEO of Citi, Steve Schwartzman, the chairman, CEO, and co-founder of the Blackstone Group, weighing in on what they think is the correct way forward here, especially as it relates to fiscal stimulus. You also heard the president talk about the fact that he is going to address the nation later this evening, talk about some specific plans that he and the administration have been working on. Let's bring back in Lenan Nguyen, finance reporter for Bloomberg. She was listening in. Lenan, what did you make of what the Wall Street chiefs had to say?
Well, it's interesting, Jason, that the Wall Street chiefs all said that kind of the big guys, the too big to fail guys, are doing just fine, well capitalized after the financial crisis and, in a strong position, whereas they were all much more concerned about small business and gig economy workers and the people kind of at the bottom of the totem pole who are going to really struggle. So obviously a lot of support in the room for some fiscal stimulus to keep the economy humming. And, a really interesting point that they're trying to draw a comparison or at least a contrast with the financial crisis, saying that things are okay. Things are okay now for the big banks. This is not 2008, and really trying to reassure the markets and give a sense of calm and things are in control.
Yeah, what do you make of the fact? I mean, obviously, you and I follow Wall Street very closely. This is our world in many ways. But, Carol and I were talking off air about the fact that if you're the CEO of maybe another in another industry, rather that's being hurt by this, do you look up and say, well, what am I, chopped liver? Why are we talking to the banks?
Well, I think the banks obviously are supposed to be shepherds of the economy. They have a very high and macro view of what the economy is doing. And so I think, he wants to reassure the markets. And a good way to do that is to get all of the bank CEOs in a room. These are heavyweights of industry, not just the bank CEOs, but, Ken Griffin and Steve Schwartzman as well, to say things are going to be okay, that, there will be some kind of policy response. Interestingly for me, a lot of the bank CEOs are really in the weeds, so they give very specific proposals and they give recommendations, whereas obviously the administration has so far not been specific about what it's planning to do. So, it's a wait and see situation, but clearly the banks had some very specific recommendations of what they thought was needed now. Help for smaller businesses, help for the little guy, and for workers who are going to have a really tough time.
Well, and it's clear this is a group of people that the president is comfortable with, right? You heard him ask Gordon Smith, I believe, how Jamie Dimon, his boss, and obviously the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, who suffered a pretty, severe heart situation, had to have emergency surgery, sort of say, how's Jamie doing? Hope he's doing well. That sort of thing. That it's an interesting sort of moment amid all of this.
Yes, and obviously he's on a first-name basis with a lot of these people. They're captains of industry. They move in the same circles in New York. It's not the first time that he's name-checked Jamie Dimon in meetings. And, last time he did a roll call and he said to Mary Erdos, the head of Wealth, say hello to Jamie for me. Right. And then he name-checked Ken Griffin as well. So, yes, I think that is a room that he's comfortable in, and it's people that he knows well. On top of which, when things like what we've seen in the markets happen over the last few days, people perhaps in markets are looking for some sense of calm and are looking to the bank CEOs to give recommendations that will help to stabilize the markets and stabilize the economy.
Right. Well, and there certainly, I'm guessing, is a sense on the part of Wall Street, whether it's traders or other investors, that, if those are the sorts of folks that maybe the president is consulting, maybe that provides a little bit of comfort to Wall Street and to investors. I guess we'll have to wait and find out, and obviously wait to see how the market, especially through the futures market, reacts to the president's address tonight. Lynn Nguyen, thank you so much, finance reporter for Bloomberg, listening in there to the president's meeting with some of the big bank and investment chieftains at the White House. Let's get to Charlie Pellet now for an update on what's been going on after the close of trading. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much. Just getting word that Amtrak is now asking workers to take unpaid leave to offset its losses as a result of people cutting back on coronavirus. Because of coronavirus, we have got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all lower today. The Dow average sinking into a bear market on virus fears. Stocks plunged around the world. Oil tumbled. The stress in U.S. credit markets deepened after the World Health Organization called the virus spread a pandemic, and the Trump administration remained unable to detail any stimulus measures to combat the economic fallout. The president will have an address tonight at about 8 o'clock Wall Street time. Yes, we will carry that for you live right here on Bloomberg Radio. Now, as for what the government could be doing, Jonathan Golub is chief U.S. equity strategist at Credit Suisse Securities.
We need to make sure that companies don't lay off workers. We need to make sure that there's not dislocation among energy companies and among companies in the travel and leisure sector. And if the government can attack those in a very micro way, they could probably spend not a lot of money and have a big impact.
Dow Jones Industrial Average down 1,464 points, down 5.9%. S&P down 140, a drop of 4.9%. NASDAQ down 392, a decline of 4.7%. 10-year down 21 30 seconds, yield 0.87%. Gold down 0.8%, $16.36 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 4.2% at $32.92 a barrel. And this headline to pass along to you: the NCAA basketball tournament will be played without fans. Uber and Lyft plunging today on concern people won't be going out. In fact, they'll be staying in. Uber down 9.4%, Lyft down 11.8%. And that's Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Just reiterating that headline because I know it will be of interest to a lot of our listeners. The NCAA basketball tournament, March Madness, one event that is very much looked forward to all year across the country, will be played without fans. This is following, of course, a number of decisions made by municipalities in certain states, by governors and various officials around limiting large gatherings of people. You have the Golden State Warriors tomorrow night playing the Brooklyn Nets in front of essentially no one. And now March Madness. Fair to say this is the first time this has ever happened. We are in uncharted territory, folks. This is Bloomberg. All right, so amid all of this, there is a presidential election happening here in 2020. The Democratic primary rolls on. It rolled through 6 states last night. Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden, was the big winner by all accounts. Bernie Sanders addressing his supporters today, or speaking, I should say, in Vermont, saying he's in it, still in it. He's going to debate Vice President Biden, former Vice President Biden, on Sunday. Let's break that down with Gregory Corti. He is political reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from our bureau in the nation's capital. Gregory, so the market is going to be doing what it's going to do, but still people did vote. What did we see yesterday on that mini Tuesday?
At least 4 of the 6 states that were voting. He won Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, and Idaho. North Dakota, which was the smallest prize of the night, went to Bernie Sanders. And in the state of Washington, which obviously is a sort of a ground zero for U.S. coronavirus cases, it's still counting the votes, and it's too close to call. But certainly it was Joe Biden's night. He's very quickly transforming this 2-man race into a 1-man race, where it's going to be prohibitively difficult for Bernie Sanders to catch up in the delegate count if Biden continues to amass delegates at this rate.
All right, so debate is the next big thing, but then we get more voting next Tuesday, right? We sort of have almost a month of voting here.
Yeah, I mean, from here on out, it's every Tuesday or so. We have another group of states voting. The 2 big dates left on the calendar are next Tuesday, which is we're calling the St. Patrick's Day primary. That's when Ohio, Illinois, Arizona, and Florida vote. And then on April 28th, we're calling the Acela primary. That's when a bunch of northeastern states from Delaware up to Rhode Island are going to vote. But both of those seem to be favorable states to Joe Biden. Arizona is a little bit of a question mark in my book, since it's a western state and Bernie Sanders has done pretty well on the West Coast. But otherwise, the contests from here on out seem to stack up pretty well for Joe Biden. And so unless something unforeseen happens, what we call an external event, which I'll leave to our listeners to decide what kind of a thing that might be. Really, Joe Biden is on a glide path to the nomination.
All right, only about 30 seconds left here, Gregory. How much pressure is building on Bernie Sanders to get out?
Well, you heard Sanders today say it's all about the debate next Sunday. He's sticking in at least until then. But he also acknowledged we're losing the debate over electability. And so it seemed to open a crack in the door that perhaps he might get out sometime in this process, which is something obviously he did not do in 2016 when he took it all the way to the convention.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because there are so many comparisons being made, and certainly certainly that drum is beating in part because of what we saw happen with Hillary Clinton, who obviously eventually became the nominee. Great context. Thank you so much. A busy day, we know, for you. Gregory Corti is political reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from our bureau in the nation's capital. Much more to come here on Bloomberg Business Week. Let's get out to San Francisco now. Ed Baxter has got world and national headlines. Hey, Ed.
Yeah, Jason, I'm going to start where you have been. Just the latest developments. NCAA basketball tourney is to be played without fans. The president has announced he will make a statement tonight regarding the coronavirus and any decisions that they've made and what decisions thus far. This comes as the WHO has declared the virus a pandemic.
Pandemic is not a word to use lightly or carelessly. It's a word that, if misused, can cause unreasonable fear or unjustified acceptance that the fight is over.
Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says the continued spread needs further measures and says the world pandemic is not to be used lightly. And this goes with the U.S. top infectious disease doctor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, saying the virus is actually 10 times more deadly than the seasonal flu, and that more drastic action needs to be taken.
We cannot look at it and say, well, there are only a couple of cases here, that's good, because a couple of cases today are going to be many, many cases tomorrow.
And a new U.S. government tests show that the coronavirus can live in the air for several hours and on some surfaces for as long as 3 days, which puts a different spin on it as well. In Washington State, Governor Jay Inslee says he is seeing all of this firsthand.
Is the coronavirus was in this country before people acknowledged, and that it is much more widespread than people acknowledge.
UK cases jumped 22%. Italy, the center of the outbreak in Europe, saw 31% increase. Confirmed cases topped 120,000 globally. Over 4,000 have passed away. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
At Asda, with our great range of beers and cider, it looks like you're hosting. Get 2 packs for just £18 or just £10 each, like 12 bottles of Corona or 10 cans of Copperberg Cherry. Cracking brands, refreshing prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Offer ends 18th of March. 330 millilitres each. Drink aware.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at bevel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by
by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet, repeating our earlier headline. The NCAA basketball tournament will be played without fans. Stocks move lower with the Dow average sinking into a bear market on coronavirus fears. The Dow plunging 1,464 points today, down 5.9%. S&P 500 index down 140 points. That was a drop of 4.9%. NASDAQ lower by 392 points, down by 4.7%. 10-year yield 0.86%. 10-year down 21/30 seconds. A rally or a move lower again for crude, dropping 3.9%, down $1.37 a barrel, $32.99 on WTI. Gold down 0.7%, $16.37 the ounce. So again, recapping here, stocks move lower. S&P down another 141 points, down 4.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. All right, love a little Steely Dan here on a Wednesday, just to maybe take it down a notch and get a sense of what's going on out there. Got an old friend back with us, Vinny Catalano, Chief Market Strategist for Stuyvesant Capital Management, Global Investment Strategist at Defoe Redmount. He's in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Welcome back.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
All right. And you brought a friend, new guy, coming in here. Arthur Weiss is founder, CIO of Kingsland Growth Advisors. Welcome.
Hello, Jason.
All right. So let's talk black swans, because certainly this feels like one. Is it?
Yeah, it does. They seem to have all of the characteristics, but not the black swan of 2008.
Okay.
The black swan, let's say, of 9/11, of a period when an exogenous event hits, and by its very nature, it's something that is unexpected, and then the markets have to, if we're focused solely on the markets have to go through an adjustment process.
And so, Arthur, what do you do here as an investor? I mean, you don't panic. Obviously, we're all taught to not do that. But what do you do that could make you feel like you're doing something?
Well, I think the most important thing to do is to be calm, to be rational, and to think through your decisions. So I'm looking for how might have business conditions changed in a more permanent way. And certainly we can argue that the energy industry, they may have changed in a more permanent way, something to be very wary of. There are other industries that are getting hit quite hard that it's likely more temporary. And I would say that the travel industry was more likely temporary. So we actually don't have exposure to other areas. But as a growth investor, what I'm always looking for is where there might be more sustainable change, and when will these crises actually lead to an acceleration in that change. And that's where I'm focused. I'm focused on what businesses may actually be able to accelerate their growth as the market is incorporating the horrors of the coronavirus.
Right. All right. Well, speaking of which, just a headline crossing right now. Italy ordering the closure of all stores except for groceries and pharmacies. This is coming from some comments that the Prime Minister is making right now. Again, just repeating, Italy ordering the closure of all shops except groceries and pharmacies. That country, as we know, very much on lockdown, extending that a little bit further. So, Vinny, help me understand this from your perspective. You've seen some things in your time.
Right.
Although this does feel a little bit like uncharted territory. You know, we were talking just before we came on air. The NCAA tournament's never been played in front of no fans.
Sure. If Italy is off Broadway, then this is the off-Broadway show that we're watching, okay? And then the Broadway show is going to be here in the United States. If the United States illness rate follows what's happened in Italy, then you're going to see America move much more into a whole lockdown period. I agree with Arthur in regards to the prudence of managing your portfolio. I agree with Arthur that ultimately that there are going to be not only the ones that Arthur looks at, but also other opportunities that will present themselves for investors. But between now and then, it's going to be, looks by every indication, tough sledding, and the market is struggling to try and find that equilibrium. Where is it? PE ratios, what's the appropriate one? And then for me, the wild card is the 10-year Treasury. I mean, what do you do with that?
Right.
What do you do with a 10-year Treasury? If a professional investor wants to plug them into valuation models, well, the S&P should be at 4,000.
Right.
Right. It's crazy stuff. So, you just kind of have to be a little bit fluid and play it by ear and use good prudence and judgment.
Well, Arthur, pick up on that. I mean, it's a really good observation that Vinny makes. We have not really seen markets behave, especially when you look at the equity market and the fixed income market, behave the way that they should, at least relative to each other. What gives here?
Well, if I was to guess what is the major change in the financial markets, it's the explosion in passive investments, and that includes ETF bond funds. And what's interesting about an ETF bond fund is that from a chart perspective, it continues to go higher and higher. And so my guess is that there are a lot of people who are buying these funds not truly appreciating what they're actually buying, what these yields are that they're going to be getting over the next 10 years. That would be my guess.
All right, so where do we go from here, Vinny?
Look for stabilization, the new equilibrium. I tried to put some numbers up. I do this LinkedIn posting pretty regularly. And if you go with Goldman's projections for 2020 of flat operating earnings for the year, and then you put an 18 multiple on that, just to pick a reasonably sensible number, you come up with roughly around 2,800 or so in the S&P, and lo and behold, that's roughly where we're at. Now, if we get a recession, then the advisable thing to do would be to plug in some numbers for, let's say, a 10% decline in earnings over the next 12 months. And if you get that, and maybe you get a little bit riskier and you put a 16 multiple on that, you're looking at maybe a 2,400 number, which just happens to be roughly where the market at a low. Now, look, so it's just, we'll see how it plays out, but right now it's just to try and buy things now, the analogy of trying to safely catch a falling knife, it's a rough thing to do. So look for opportunities, look here and there, be very, very selective and prudent and careful.
Any names that you like in this environment, Arthur?
Well, one that I was actually at their analyst day last week, Teladoc Health. It's a company that is really taking the leadership role in telemedicine. So they have made a number of acquisitions over the years, which basically is positioning them to have physicians around the world. And what it means is that if you have and they have about 60 million people who have access to their system, you can now have a doctor's visit telephonically through video chat, and these doctors may in fact be much more informed than your local doctor down the road, because they actually have a working knowledge of what is happening in China.
Yeah, interesting. What do you worry about the most here, Vinny?
That this metastasizes. Sorry to use that expression, that phrase, but into something more.
Just that it gets bigger and bigger, or that the virus itself changes.
That the virus itself changes, and that this becomes both medically and economically a real serious problem that goes beyond what we think we can forecast and guesstimate right now, which looks like a 3-month or so heavy-duty hit, and then we see where we move from there.
All right. Really appreciate your time, both of you. Vinny Catalano, Chief Market Strategist for Stuyvesant. Arthur Weiss, Founder, CIO of Kingsland Growth Advisors. This is Bloomberg.
Business is like a puzzle. Can you make a call given this swirl of data? Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps and BloombergRadio.com.
Well, that didn't take long. It became apparent very quickly and very clearly that China's moves to slow the spread of the coronavirus dramatically cut carbon emissions and air pollution. Analysts warned that would be temporary. And they were right. Satellite data already show nitrogen dioxide levels rising again across China's industrial heartland. Coal use is on the rise at coastal power plants. President Xi Jinping has stressed that the country should not only win the war with the virus, but also achieve this year's targets.
Here's your King Box double melt.
Thanks. And if you could get this back to me by Tuesday. What's this? My homework. I just need 2,000 words on Tutankhamun. But I... Oh, come on. It won't take you long. Oh, and don't forget to double-check the spelling. Check the spelling?
The King Box Double Melt, including a double burger with melted cheese, fries, side, and a drink. At just $4.99, you owe us. Big time. Subject to availability at participating restaurants. Only at Burger King.
From cafes by the sea to restaurants in the city, at Starling Bank, we'll help you keep your business flying high. With flexible overdrafts of up to £150,000, we'll get your cash flow running smoothly. Your business is ready for takeoff. Starling Bank. Helping business fly.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A number of after-the-bell major headlines involving coronavirus to pass along. We begin with the New York City St. Patrick's Day Parade, canceled, according to Crane's New York Business, for the first time in over 200 years. Private equity firm Carlyle telling some of its companies to draw on credit lines. Italy has ordered the closure of all shops except groceries and pharmacies, and the NCAA basketball tournament will be played without fans. And again, repeating, New York City St. Patrick's Day Parade canceled for the first time in over 200 years. Steep losses on Wall Street again this Wednesday, with the S&P 500 index plunging 141 points, down 4.9%. Dow Industrials down 1,464 points. That was a drop of 5.9%. NASDAQ plunged 392 points, down 4.7%. Stocks declined around the world. Oil tumbled. The stress in U.S. credit markets deepened after the World Health Organization called the virus spread a pandemic. Sarah Hunt is portfolio manager at Alpine Woods Capital Investors.
Certainly the absolute sort of obliviousness of the equity markets while this was going on for the last couple of months seems to be over for now. And I think that we're going to have to see where we go in terms of earnings, and also how long this takes for things to start normalizing, and you don't see headlines where something's being canceled every day. And I think right now that's really challenging.
Shares of Uber Technologies and Lyft plunged today as investors worried that the coronavirus outbreak might be entering a phase where fewer people choose to step out of their homes, hurting demand for ride-hailing services. Uber down 9.4%, Lyft plunging 11.8%. So again, recapping the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, steep losses there. S&P down 140, a drop of 4.9%. 10-year down 21.30 seconds, that yield 0.86%. Want to mention gold, higher now by 0.1%, 16.36 the ounce. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. All right, so I have a million things to ask our next guest, and it's a homecoming of sorts for him. Dexter Roberts, he is now a Mansfield Fellow at the University of Montana, but he's former China Bureau Chief for Bloomberg Business Week. He's got a book out, The Myth of Chinese Capitalism, The Worker, the Factory, and the Future of the World. No big deal, just taking on a huge topic here. He's here with me in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Welcome back.
Well, thank you.
So I've been debating with myself where to start. Let's start with the book, just because it's so timely in a lot of ways. you probably couldn't have imagined how timely it was going to be when you started it. What was the idea that you set out to capture?
So the basic idea, or the myth of the title, is this idea that China is becoming more capitalistic, that China is continuing on this reform path that started way back under Deng Xiaoping.
Yeah.
Continuing, the myth is that China will continue to grow its middle class. And yes.
All right. So I'm going to stop you there only to say, what does the last 3 months mean for that?
Well, so we were talking coronavirus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So, I mean, I think that what some of the things, the arguments I make in the book about the other China, the migrant workers and the farmers, their cousins in the countryside, which, by the way, is about 500 million people. So we're getting close to half the population. They've been long treated.
More people than live in the United States.
Yes, considerably more than live in the United States. Well, for a long time, they've in effect been treated as second-class citizens. They don't have access to the same health care. They don't have access to the same education. On average, they're making less than roughly a third of urban incomes, and there's policies that keep them in that position, which we can get into later. But that relationship between the people in the city and these second-class citizens has really been brought home. I mean, the unequal relationship has really been brought home by the coronavirus, because even as cities in Beijing seem to be returning to some degree, and normalcy is not the right word, but things are a little more regular there. If you're a white-collar worker, you're working from home, you're going into the office sometimes. Things are a little more normal. Companies are reopening. That's not happening for these people, these migrants and rural people.
Right. And so you were in Beijing for 23 years. You were in Taiwan before that. How did this story change? How did your thesis evolve, or what did you see happen over that period? Because that 23 years, it just ended for you just a couple of years ago. I mean, what a period in the history of the country.
Yes. I mean, when I arrived in, I think it was January of 1995 in Beijing, and, the economy was somewhere in the bottom of the top 10 economies in the world, I think. There wasn't really a consumer economy. There really wasn't. I mean, the car sales were 85% government and fleet sales for big state enterprises. There weren't people buying cars. There was no housing market, really. There was no housing market until later reforms happened in the late 90s. So the place was transformed. WTO entry in 2001, which I covered for Business Week, was a real seminal moment, obviously bringing in enormous amounts of investment and really transforming the economy and bringing this factory to the world export model into its full character.
Mm-hmm. And so when you left, what were you thinking China would become? Is that sort of what's manifested in this book?
So I mean, I first met some of the people that I talk about in the book. This family this relatives from a small town in rural Guizhou, the Mo's, in the year 2000. I was doing a cover story. I did a cover story for Business Week called "The Great Migration," and at that point, we're a year before WTO entry. Everyone knew China was getting in then. The agreement was signed in 99. There was great hope, including for these villagers in this small town. This idea that foreign investment would come in. They were glad to see me as a Business Week reporter who might somehow let the world know about their village. They wanted processing factories for the chilies that they grew in the slopes in their town. So there was really great hope. And this continued for years, I must say. But what I argue in the book is particularly in the last 5 years, that vision of a continual reform and more opportunity for people has really vanished.
Right. So before we knew about the virus, we knew a lot about the trade war. How was that playing through, especially on the China side? Because we talked a lot, as you can imagine, having worked here, about the global impact, but certainly the U.S. impact. How was that playing through your perception on the China side?
Yeah, well, I think China's, it's not exactly a double whammy, but they were struggling with the trade war for the last 2 years before the coronavirus ever hit them. And at the same time, of course, multinationals were already looking at the immediate need to diversify the global supply chain.
Right.
And China, on the other hand, was saying, "Wait a minute, this is an issue that will continue to bedevil us." They started to diversify, for example, their agricultural purchases. They stopped buying so many American soybeans, and they started buying big in Brazilian soybeans. So there was already a shifting relationship there. The economy was impacted by it. The coronavirus comes along; it really hits the economy, of course. And we're going to see, we've already seen it. We're going to see negative growth. Everything basically shut down for the last couple months. And on the outside, these multinationals are now, it's painfully obvious that they need to diversify their global supply chains much more quickly.
Right. Just want to bring one headline that is crossing the Bloomberg right now. It has to do with travel, and that is the President of the United States weighing restricting non-essential travel from Europe. So that is a headline just crossing the Bloomberg now. There were some allusions to this in the President's comments earlier. We, of course, are going to hear from President Trump later on this evening, I believe at 8 p.m. New York time. He is going to address the nation, talk about some of the steps that he is taking to fight the coronavirus. And that, of course, is coming after the meeting that he had with a lot of the Wall Street CEOs there in Washington earlier this afternoon. Dexter Roberts is going to stick with me. Really excited to continue our conversation. So much to talk about. We're going to talk about Hong Kong, talk more about his book, and where China may go from here. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. In the meantime, let's get out to San Francisco. Ed Baxter is there with world and national headlines. Hi, Ed.
Yeah, Jason, hi. And as you spoke, the White House now has revised the time that the president is due to speak to 9 o'clock Wall Street time. So they've put it back an hour regarding coronavirus, of course. Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has ordered the closure of all shops except grocery and pharmacy. Also says there is not a need for a run on supermarkets. He says food deliveries will still be allowed. This comes as the WHO has declared the virus a pandemic.
In the days and weeks ahead, we expect to see the number of cases, the number of deaths, and the number of affected countries climb even higher.
Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus is saying the continued spread needs further measures, says the word pandemic is not used lightly. And this goes with the U.S. top infectious disease doctor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, saying the virus is actually 10 times more deadly than the seasonal flu, and that more drastic action does definitely need now to be taken.
How much worse we'll get will depend on our ability to do two things: to contain the influx in people who are infected coming from the outside, and the ability to contain and mitigate within our own country.
U.S. government tests show the new coronavirus can live in the air for several hours, on some surfaces for as long as 3 days. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says in his discussions with health professionals, his theory has become clear.
Is the coronavirus was in this country before people acknowledged, and that it is much more widespread than people acknowledge.
And the NCAA basketball tourney is to be played without fans. So is the Golden State Warriors game against the Brooklyn Nets tomorrow night. And the Mormon Church in Salt Lake City will hold a major conference in April without attendees. A lot of things going on. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter.
Ed, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Dexter Roberts is still with me. He works out at the University of Montana now. He's a former Bloomberg Business Week China Bureau Chief. So I got to ask you, 23 years, almost 3 decades, I believe, living over in Asia. You come back to, I believe, your home state of Montana. What was that like?
Well, a big change. I mean, The state of Montana has about roughly 1 million people. I think I was telling you earlier, the district of Beijing had 5 that I lived in, called Chaoyang District, had maybe 5 or 6 million people. In the whole city, maybe 20 million. So, radically different, yes.
And so when you talk to folks there in Montana, or just back here in the United States, I feel like I deal with this here in New York City. How much misconception is there, especially in this day and age with all the back and forth between the U.S. and China about China? How much sort of education, re-education do you feel like you're doing to help people understand it?
Well, I think that happens a lot. There are some misconceptions, but I should say, I was surprised and pleasantly surprised at how out in Montana, there's a big agricultural industry.
Yeah.
A lot of those people, whether it's wheat or beef, these are people that have been relying on the China market and pretty knowledgeable people. I do call in radio in Montana, and I get these ranchers calling in, and they actually know a lot about China.
Yeah. And what did they make of the trade war?
They, it's Montana. So they started out being pretty supportive of the administration, and hoping and saying, yes, hard times ahead, but the tariffs are necessary. I think that is starting to sort of crumble. Yeah. People are worried. They're still struggling.
Yeah. All right. We're going to continue our conversation. Really excited to have Dexter Roberts here with me. He's a Mansfield Fellow, the Mansfield Fellow at the University of Montana, also a former Bloomberg Businessweek China Bureau Chief. His book, The Myth of Chinese Capitalism, The Work of the Factory, and the Future of the World. You're going to want to check that out. Our conversation, more of it straight ahead. This is Bloomberg. And check out today's Bloomberg Businessweek podcast. You'll hear how the coronavirus is entering a new phase and why you can't fight the virus without harming the economy. Download that wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Organizers of the New York City St. Patrick's Day Parade now disputing earlier media reports saying the parade has been canceled because of the coronavirus. In a tweet, parade organizers now say, contrary to media reports, no decision has been made to cancel the parade. Steep losses for U.S. stocks again today, with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all plunging again on coronavirus fears. S&P 500 index down 140 points, lower by 4.9%. President Trump set to talk to the nation tonight. 8 o'clock Wall Street time. We'll have it for you live here on Bloomberg Radio. Dow Industrials down 1,464 points. That's a plunge of 5.9%. S&P again down 140, down 4.9%. NASDAQ down 392, a drop there of 4.7%. 10-year yield 0.86%. Gold down 0.2%, $16.32 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.6%, $33.12 a barrel. Again, recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 4.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Still with me, Dexter Roberts, Mansfield Fellow at University of Montana out in Missoula, and the former Bloomberg Business Week China Bureau Chief. His new book, his first, The Myth of Chinese Capitalism, The Worker, the Factory, and the Future of the World. Incredibly timely, a great read. Dexter, I have to ask you, amid coronavirus and trade war talk, one of the things, and certainly with coronavirus, one of the things that I felt like has fallen away, and I feel like is very apropos of your book, is the Hong Kong protests. And sort of what generated that, what was underneath it, the response. What do you make of it? How does it fit into sort of the thesis of your book?
Well, first of all, it hasn't gone away. So, and there was a recent flare-up in protests again. And whenever, the world's attention someday, we hope not too long, can pass beyond the coronavirus, we're going to be hearing about the Hong Kong protests a lot more.
Really?
Because the issues that have caused them have not gone away at all. And so I would say in Hong Kong, you've got people that basically feel less and less Chinese as the leadership in China has sort of pushed away from this reform model, as I talk about in the book. They feel less and less part of the future of China. When China looked like it was post World Trade Organization entry, looked like it was on this path towards greater liberalization. Right up to the 2008 Olympics, we saw an opening in society as well. They really felt like, we can be part of China. Young people in Hong Kong today do not feel Chinese. Right. Surveys have shown they identify themselves as Hong Kong. They strongly do not like to be called Chinese.
That's so interesting. Well, we are, as you well know, Bloomberg Business Week, having worked under our auspices for a long time. Talk about the business side of all this and some of the big companies, because as you say, you get to Beijing in the mid-90s, and it's a very different economy than it is now. The global supply chain now is so deeply rooted in China, something that we've learned very clearly over the past couple months with the coronavirus. You think about a name like Apple, you think about their relationships there with a Foxconn and others. Help us understand how that came about, where it is, and where it goes.
Well, again, with China's WTO entry and the associated policies of market opening that were implemented, it became the place to be. And obviously, these companies like Apple, they were looking at it as an export platform, and they were looking at it, of course, as a market. And that was the right way to look at it. And they assumed, like everyone else, that the opening would continue, and that would drive continued growth in the middle class, and they would continue to benefit from that. What we've seen in recent years is, as I argue in the book, sort of a stalling of reform and therefore of growth in the middle class. And a lot of companies like Apple, they've pretty much saturated the big urban markets.
Yeah.
And they're not going to, the days of fast growth are not going to happen. They had assumed it would happen because they had assumed the same thing would happen in the countryside, in the other half of China. And it just really isn't.
Right. And so ultimately, just to come back to the virus, at least for a minute, how much of a test of this and how is he doing with it is this for President Xi?
So, as we all know, the world knows now, initially there was a real failure in that there was a cover-up.
Yeah.
And during that time, a doctor was punished, obviously, for actually talking about this crisis that he recognized. During that time when the cover-up was happening, the disease spread and people, frankly, died and things got worse. Now China is looking better. They've used all their draconian powers with the quarantines, with the lockdowns, with digital monitoring of citizens through their mobile phones. They've been actually really able to get a handle on this crisis. And if we believe the figures, and roughly, there may be problems there, but I do think what we're seeing is a drop-off.
Right.
And so now they're trumpeting this great victory. That's very good. The argument that I would make is that this is really this is what's happening in the cities. So if you look at the people in the cities, and if you talk to them, frankly, a lot of them are probably going to be quite supportive of these increasing authoritarian measures because they'll say, look, the leadership protected us.
Right. It worked.
It worked. And this is what happened after SARS in 2003.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a piece for Business Week basically arguing that the Communist Party was being strengthened by the SARS virus, and I think they were. I think that's going to happen in urban China, but that's not happening in the countryside. The migrants that are struggling they're not happy about where this is going.
All right. Only about a minute left, unfortunately for me. Biggest surprise putting this book together. You sit down, you have all this knowledge that you're distilling down. What jumped out at you as you were sort of putting it together?
Well, I'm not sure when actually in the process this jumped out at me, but either during the process or slightly before, this realization that, so this system in China, which is buttressed by these policies, the household registration and the land policy, it's a huge human rights crisis. I mean, they're treating half the population like second-class citizens. What I realized in the writing of the book, and I hope it comes through, is that this has actually been integral to the quote-unquote China economic miracle. Yeah. They've used this sort of captive population of low-paid workers in order to do what they've done.
Right. Well, it's a terrific book, a provocative new book. Dexter Roberts, he is the Mansfield Fellow at the University of Montana, and we proudly say, former Bloomberg Businessweek China Bureau Chief. His book, his first, The Myth of Chinese Capitalism, The Worker, the Factory, and the Future of the World, incredibly timely, really helps you understand the place that China has, how it got there, and maybe more importantly, where it's going from here. And with everything going on in the world related to the virus, the trade war, and as Dexter mentioned, the Hong Kong protests that aren't actually going away, just in the background right now. It's a must read. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week here on Bloomberg Radio.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street's coronavirus sell-off deepens, sending the Dow into a bear market. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ narrowly avoided that fate. Selling pressure intensified after the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus outbreak a pandemic. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged 1,465. The S&P 500 dropped 141. The NASDAQ Composite tumbled 392. Oil closed sharply lower. Crude finished at $32.98 a barrel, down $1.38. As more people stay home to avoid the coronavirus, shares of Uber and Lyft are nosediving. Uber tumbled nearly 9.5%. Lyft lost nearly 12% as demand for the ride-hailing services dries up. It's game over for Modell's Sporting Goods. The family-owned retailer has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and will close all of its stores. Modell's has 153 stores from Massachusetts to Virginia. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination,
when you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The government has coordinated and streamlined its coronavirus messaging, but is it the right message?
What's really necessary is for the people in the government who don't know the details to stop telling us things like there will be a vaccine in 1 year. Stop it. That's not helpful.
Making sense of the noise and the silence on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly here with you in New York City. Coming up, we're going to go slightly north into New Rochelle, check in with a resident there about what is going on there, what it's like in that quarantined state. That's straight ahead. But first, Charlie Pellet is here with an update on a lot of headlines after the close. Hey, Charlie.
Indeed, absolutely right. Let me begin with what happened on Wall Street today, Jason. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all plunging again today, with the S&P down 140 points. That was a drop of 4.9%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 1,464 points, down 5.9%. And NASDAQ is down 392 points, a drop of 4.7%. Some of those after the bell headlines include President Trump weighing restricting non-essential travel from Europe. He will be addressing the nation tonight. We'll have that on Bloomberg Radio for you just about 8 o'clock Wall Street time. March Madness NCAA basketball tournament to be played without fans, and parade organizers here in New York now disputing earlier media reports that the St. Patrick's Day parade has been canceled. Again, a down day. We've got the 10-year down 21.30 seconds, yield there 0.86%. Gold down 0.2%, 16.32 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.6%, 33.12 a barrel. Falling energy prices kept a lid on February's consumer price index, but some healthcare costs picked up ahead of the coronavirus outbreak. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The gauge of household costs rose 0.1% for the second month in a row. Energy prices dropping the most in more than a year and will no doubt keep falling, with Russia and Saudi Arabia flooding the world with petroleum products. Medical service costs remain a hotspot, with health insurance rising at a record pace in February and no end in sight. Housing costs also increased. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
And again, recapping, stocks plunge again. S&P 500 index down 140. That was a drop of 4.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. Well, a lot of eyes here in the tri-state area have turned to New Rochelle, the epicenter of a lot of what's going on, at least at the moment, when it comes to the coronavirus. Mark Seymour is a resident there. He joins me, and full disclosure, he's a good friend of mine. And I wanted to talk to him about what's going on there. Mark, how are you?
Thank you, Jason, for having me on the show. I'm feeling well, and my family is doing well also. And we're all really trying to keep our chins up and to get through this as effectively as possible. Like you said, we've become the epicenter of the first major outbreak of the coronavirus here in the U.S., and we're all a little bit shocked by it all, but doing our very best to get through it quickly and effectively.
Right. Well, and it sounds like, from what you and I have been corresponding a little bit, and, you're giving me a sense and that, this is a community that is very much coming together. Help me understand what's going on.
Well, there's the larger community, and certainly within the larger New Rochelle community is the Young Israel's New Rochelle community, which is our synagogue right here in the center of town, and a number of some people who have been affected by the virus are part of our community. And starting about a week ago, actually last Tuesday, we were asked to self-quarantine by New York State officials and by Westchester officials. And we have gone out of our way to be cooperative and compliant with officials on all levels of government, not only for our own health and safety, but also for the greater community. And from the very beginning, from the time that there was only one case in the community, we accepted that guidance. We took it very seriously, and I think you probably heard, and others have, we closed our building, and we have agreed to self-quarantine. This has come at a really great sacrifice for a lot of people, even as there's been confusion and frustration due to a lot of uncertainty that we face.
Well, and we're talking about 1,000 people, right, Mark?
Yeah, we have, that's correct, Jason. We have a little less than 400 membership units, families, so multiple people in each house. So it's about 1,000 people in quarantine for more than a week right now, and we have several days to go. My quarantine lifts on Sunday, my family on Monday, and we're kind of waiting to see how things go. We have people away from their jobs. We have people away from the normal routines. It's very, very difficult to keep up with everything we have to do in life.
Westchester County, as you mentioned, and I mean, help us understand, help listeners understand, like, what is day-to-day life like with this many people under quarantine? Because it's one thing if it's, a family or a couple of families, but as we said, this is 1,000 people.
It's 1,000 people, and 1,000 people within one synagogue community. And I can't say enough that while our building is closed and we're not able to be together physically for prayer and learning and other activities, we are very much open for business, and we are serving the community, and we're supporting each other in many ways. We're doing everything we can to maintain normalcy in a situation that is anything but normal.
Right.
We're focused internally. We're serving the needs of our community, making sure everyone's safe. Special attention is being paid to older people and those who are alone and those with special needs. And we're using technology. Kudos to Zoom and every other resource available to us to keep our members engaged and fulfilled.
Mark, I have to ask you, as I disclosed at the top, you and I are good friends, and I know you're a very good family man as well, and close with your kids, and your kids are very much in the community as well. I do wonder, how is sort of the kid level dealing with all this? This must be confusing and a little scary.
The kids are holding up great. I'm in my house. I can't speak for everybody's kids, but we've got a lot of good parents around here and a lot of good kids. And everyone is, I believe, trying their best to cope and to stay productive. I have to give a lot of credit not only to our synagogue, but also to our Jewish day schools in the area. FAR Academy, Westchester Day School, Westchester Torah Academy are all very engaged with the kids. We're getting emails on a daily basis with opportunities for them to learn. I'm not just extracurricular type of stuff, but real classes that are trying to stay on schedule and to do their curriculum and keep the kids on target. They're missing a lot of school.
Right.
And the schools have been absolutely wonderful. They've been engaged with government officials just as we have.
Right.
And providing very, very important leadership.
All right.
There's so much happening for everybody through technology right now. People are learning. We celebrated the Purim holiday to the best of our ability through technology. We even celebrated a Bat Mitzvah last week. So
all right.
Pretty special stuff.
All right. Mark Siemer, thank you so much. Resident of New Rochelle, joining me on the phone from that Westchester town, the epicenter of what's going on so far when it comes to the coronavirus in New York. Let's get out to San Francisco. Ed Baxter is there with a world and national update. Hey, Ed.
Hi, Jason. That was really nice. I want to follow up what you and Mark have been talking about. President Trump says he'll make a statement tonight at 9 o'clock Wall Street time on what the administration will do regarding the coronavirus. He has just said that he is weighing restricting non-essential travel from Europe. President Trump, meanwhile, has tweeted that he is now prepared to use the full power of the federal government to fight the virus. WHO labels the coronavirus outbreak a global pandemic, and Bernie Sanders is still in, so let's go through some of it. The WHO now labeling the coronavirus outbreak a global pandemic. This is what he's saying.
Pandemic is not a word to use lightly or carelessly. It's a word that, if misused, can cause unreasonable fear or unjustified acceptance that the fight is over.
WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says cases will continue to climb. The U.S. top infectious disease doctor Anthony Fauci says as numbers break down, the new coronavirus is 10 times more deadly than the seasonal flu.
We cannot look at it and say, well, there are only a couple of cases here, that's good, because a couple of cases today are going to be many, many cases tomorrow.
Despite disappointing showings for 2 weeks in primary voting, Bernie Sanders is going ahead with his campaign.
While our campaign has won the ideological debate, we are losing the debate over electability.
And he says the party establishment has to speak to the youth in the party. He looks forward to this weekend's debate. Global news 24 hours a day in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Ed, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly here in New York City. All right, Charlie Pellet, Starbucks, go.
It's getting real here. Starbucks expanding emergency pay for staff affected by the coronavirus in the U.S. It is the latest major company to adjust pay leave policies in response to the worsening outbreak. The company will be offering so-called catastrophe pay, and that is regardless of whether they are showing symptoms for up to 14 days. Starbucks also says it will offer, quote, additional pay replacement for as much as 26 weeks to employees unable to return to work after that period. Jason, they're also joining Walmart, Darden restaurants, and McDonald's in rolling out policies aimed at easing employee concerns about not showing up for work.
You know what I find so interesting about this? This is a huge structural systemic problem in the U.S. economy. And you do wonder, and maybe it's been so dark, and maybe I'm a little bit bolstered by my conversation just now with Mark Seymour about some of the good things that are happening here. But you do wonder if, and this was alluded to in the conversation that the president had with a lot of the Wall Street banks, this is shining a light on some real inequalities, economic inequalities in the country.
You're absolutely right about that, but the direction I want to go into is the fact that Starbucks shares, they got hit hard today along with much of the rest of the market, down 8.8%. Again, if you miss a cup of Starbucks coffee, you miss that latte in the morning, that's gone forever. You're not having two lattes the next day just because you weren't there this morning.
No, you're exactly right. And listen, the economic impacts of this are going to be felt far and wide. We don't know exactly what they're going to be. And that's part of the reason why we're seeing such massive sell-offs in the market, because investors continue to want some level of certainty, and they're just not finding it. Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Always good to catch up with you, and kudos to you for finding that story and bringing it to our attention. Coming up, I'm going to check in with Ebanovi Williams, talk about a different sort of NCAA tournament. This is Bloomberg. And Bloomberg Business Week, it is brought to you by Carnegie Hall Bloomberg Pursuits, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and Chorus performing Beethoven's Missa Solemnis on April 4th. For tickets, visit carnegiehall.com.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off home runs.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Looking up, and this one is gone!
Follow TuneIn on social media to stay in the game. From live reminders of the biggest games in every league, to staff pick recommendations of our favorite sports shows and podcasts.
Yeah, but you're really greedy, Dak, but nobody's thinking that
Skip,
yet.
You know how these contracts work. All that 40 years for 5 years for $200 million.
Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to hear more sports.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Cover now. She'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services,